conference. And today I want to introduce to you two incredible entrepreneurs, both who have very interesting companies in the different variations of AI space. Job Rosenberg is the CEO and founder of Epistema, and he'll tell you what Epistema means. And Alex Foreman is the founder and co-founder and the head of organizational development and Abilty. I haven't seen a title like this, organizational development, so that's interesting.
Came up with it myself.
I think this is my fifth or fourth year here at the conference, and I love the engagement, the discussions. This is a very different conference from kind of many others that I attend in terms of the networking effect that I see here from startups, the ideas that I see here, the energy, and love meeting old friends and making new friends. So the Fireside Chat today will focus on the topic that the industry at large is very, it's a hot topic for Silicon Valley, hot topic for AI industry. And the real question is, what is real about AI? What is hype? And is it really going to enhance human ability for decision making, create agility in decision making, and if so, when? With that, let's dive right into it. My first question is to both of you, and really it's about, tell us briefly, we only have 20 minutes for this fireside chat, about your mission, your role, anything else you want to tell us about your company. We'll start with Job.
Yeah. So thanks for the opportunity first. I think putting it very briefly, we're very interested in knowledge. Epistema is just the Greek word for reliable knowledge, and we're very concerned with truth in capital T. So we try to design our software for truth, to allow people to think better in a scientific, rigorous way with the help of machine learning algorithms. And what we have as a product, in 3 words, would be Quora for business on AI. So we're trying to be able to score the different views, not based on simple votes, but on a much deeper analysis of the different capacities and expertise of each of the participants.
Alex?
And so hi, everyone. My name's Alex. Invitae is a clinical genetics company. So basically, it was founded with a premise that genetics really belongs in mainstream medicine. Historically, genetics has been this esoteric, expensive thing that is poorly understood, hard to navigate, incredibly expensive, and very, very carefully doled out by our healthcare systems to some small percentage of the people. And the thing of it is, though, that all of us carry something in our genetics that can potentially have a profound effect on our lives, on our health and wellness, and on that of our children and our children's children. And there's really, and only a small percentage of us have access to that information just because how difficult and how expensive it's been to access historically, and it doesn't have to be this way. Over the years, I have seen the tide change, and we're in the very beginning of that wave that ultimately, at its culmination, is taking us towards the dream of precision medicine, which is something we've been talking about for years. And my own role, in 2 words, has been interesting. I'm a software engineer by training. When we started the company, I worked on the bioinformatics and the software development side. And then at some point in time, as we were experiencing our first period of explosive growth, it turned out that human systems and human problems and breakdowns in teamwork were really emerging as one of the primary threats to the business. And with a tremendous amount of surprise, I found myself heading up our people function, which I thought was going to be a temporary thing until I stabilized things and handed off to a professional. And that was years ago, and I've been at it ever since. We started Invitae about 10 years ago. We took it public in 2015. We're based in San Francisco, but we're fairly spread out across the country and even the world at this point.
Thanks. Job. So lots of discussion about AI. In your view, what's real, what's hype, and in what's real, what is the step in enhancing human behavior?
Yeah. So my view, I think, is a bit contrarian, although I've heard the other speakers, one of them said a similar thing. I think the main hype is with people that promote the idea that as long as you collect enough data, at one point there will be a black box algorithm that will solve all the business problems available, from healthcare to transactions, fraudulent transactions, and everything else. In my experience, I've been working for the Israeli intelligence for 25 years. We have a lot of data, I can guarantee that. Still, the human mind is quite a strong machine, and we will need to have humans involved in solving our most difficult problems. So AI can work very nicely for recommending the next book on Amazon or the next movie on Netflix. If it fails, it doesn't matter so much. But to really ask the right questions about your business, being able to put up the competing hypotheses in a more of a rational, scientific way is something that computers cannot do, and I will claim will not be able to do, at least, let's say, in the next decade. That's enough for the industry. Philosophically, I would argue for more than that. So I think the hype is for people who try to promote the idea that black boxes can solve major problems without humans.
Right, I think your point is ask the right questions and that's the AI behind.
So again, my academic background is in physics and philosophy, and the scientific revolution told us how you promote knowledge. And it's by asking the right questions, then promoting hypotheses, and then using the data to either support or falsify your hypothesis. So data is very important. I'm not diminishing the importance of data, but just saying finding correlations in data is not enough.
Alex, what do you see? Is AI going to replace human jobs?
The answer to that question, I think, is yes and no, right? Like, it is clear that AI and automation in general is replacing some jobs and creating others. So at Abilty, we're fundamentally a clinical laboratory, and when we were starting the business and when I was visiting various clinical laboratories around the country, I saw a whole bunch of humans running around with Sharpies and pipettes, sort of pipetting liquids from test tube to test tube. Right? When you look at our lab at Abilty, right, there is none of that. It is completely roboticized, and the control systems are also automatic, and there's actually quite a bit of machine learning to ensure quality and reproducibility of our processes. That said, the ability to do this is what allows us to offer a service that used to cost tens of thousands of dollars for a couple of $100s to the patient right now, vastly increasing access, right, by a couple of orders of magnitude and creating a whole lot of other jobs in the process. So I think there are some things that humans are inherently not very good at, like repetitive attention tasks is a good example. In my world, it's pipetting. There's plenty of jobs that humans are great at, and machine learning and in general, sort of modern technologies can empower people to do things that couldn't be done before, creating jobs, creating demand, and pushing all of us forward.
All right. So I'm hearing that, and we heard this on the first panel with Alistair, that ask the right questions, have experts provide answers, eliminate manual steps. That's the power of AI. So, Job, you have an interesting platform. You call this the Ment platform, and that's what your startup is developing right now. Can you tell us about it?
Yeah, essentially, as I said, it's a SaaS platform. It would look, I think, initially similar to Quora, so you can initiate any thought process that may lead to a decision, a business decision within your business. It's very inclusive, so everybody can participate. But unlike the usual forums or the usual platforms up till now, that at the end of the day you need to read the whole thread if you want to understand what people are saying, and that becomes, as you know, too long. Or the better ones allow you to do some simple average of upvotes and downvotes. We managed to structure the software a bit more, so we're able to capture the discussions on a graph database, and therefore on the back end, we're able to implement several kinds of algorithms that are actually based on a profession called Bayesian epistemology to be able to actually score for the level of confidence of each of the claims and for the level of expertise or the cognitive matrix of each of the participants. For example, we can see who are the more contrarian people in your organization, who are the more agreeable ones. We see some gender differences, some cultural differences. We can compensate for them on the scoring mechanism. And we can, I think for the first time, actually alert and compensate for several kinds of psychological biases in terms of the discussions ongoing in the organization. So for example, pointing out a groupthink within one of the subunits and compensating for it.
Alex, your company, Invita, you mentioned last night, are saving lives. So you have an incredible business going on, and yet you have another development effort within that business called the Org1 platform. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, this is kind of a cool story. So when, like 5 or 6 years ago, to my tremendous surprise, I found myself as the HR executive at a publicly traded company, right? Something that like I would have never seen coming, by the way. One of the things we immediately started investing in is figuring out how we can align our incentive structure, so basically how we hire, fire, compensate, promote, and so on, with the highly cross-functional nature of the work that we do. Right? We saw what I think of as a fundamental rift between a traditional performance management and compensation structure, which is very siloed in most organizations, and the really valuable work actually being tremendously cross-functional. And we went out and we looked for solutions and didn't find any solutions, and wound up making a call to build it ourselves. And we wound up building a platform that is based on a tremendously simple premise, which is we take everything we know about how work is actually getting done within the organization in real time. So by looking at things like project management data, work charts, but also by scraping calendars, the metadata from email, Slack, and so on, to build a live, constantly refreshed social graph representation of work that's happening in real time. And then we started, on one hand, applying network analytical approaches to that graph and identifying really, really surprising sort of pockets of talent and pockets of value that we wouldn't have seen otherwise. And also layering a modified and specialized 360-degree review on top of that graph to make sure that the right people at the right time are providing feedback and weighing in on each other's performance. And then over the years, we've layered on tons of analytics and predictive modeling on top of that system to do fairly amazing things. But at its core, it's a simple premise.
So, question to both of you. Do you think the role of leadership in organizations is going to change? This intelligence that's being collected and applied, how is it going to affect the organization? If you could look into the future.
I'll go. So I think tremendously, and I think it's changing already, right? So one of the interesting upshots we saw from our approach, and to my chagrin and maybe a little bit of shame, I only asked that question a few months ago because I was fairly naive. But a few months ago, I actually hired an outside statistician to take a look at our structure and our compensation to see if there's a gender bias. And it turns out that there isn't, right? Despite the fact that there's nothing that we have done that was gender specific on how we figure out performance and compensates and so on. But half of our leadership at every level happens to be women. And it turns out that when we look empirically at how well people are doing it, like surprise, 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 right? It turns out that women, for example, do about as well as men do, and sometimes slightly better on the margins. When we look at the types of leaders we have, it's easy to see that at Invita, we have a high percentage of quiet leaders, of the people that we maybe wouldn't have even known about as a senior management team, but who were continually identified by the peers around them as doing great work. And then we would throw more responsibility their way. Invita roughly doubles every year and has for a long time, so there's a lot of opportunity for additional responsibility. And we found that a lot of these quiet leaders are knocking it out of the park over and over again, to the point that, like, I have good reasons to believe that this is a tremendous competitive advantage for us.
Good job.
Yeah, to my mind, first of all, we didn't say that before, but we have a bot integrated into Slack, so we address mid-level managers in companies of over, let's say, 100 employees. So I think the first necessary condition for someone to use a platform such as ours is to be an inclusive manager, so wanting to listen to your people and thinking that they do have knowledge to contribute and to want to have a more of a diverse conversation. I think the majority of the clients that we meet are like that. So there are very few managers that think they know everything, especially if they're in big organizations. They want to listen, and the problem is most platforms today just don't allow you to send an email to 600 people and read all the replies. So in that sense, it's kind of easy. I think the more deeper cultural change is the fact that, as I said, we design for truth in capital T, although it's a probabilistic truth, and therefore we need to speak about what truth is, simple little question. But the fact that people become more accountable so that you can, in some important sense, check what they do, how they do, and how they perform in terms of contributing to the knowledge of the company is a major change. So just attaching a probability to one of your claims is very contrary to what people are used on the internet and in the workplace today. Because today, most of the tools were designed for freedom of speech. So just speak up, we're not judging you. Facebook is not judging you, Google is not judging you. If you want to have a website on the earth being flat, it will be there and everybody can access it, and no one will put a huge banner saying, you know, earth is not flat. We attach a level of confidence to what you're saying, and that requires a major change in the way you run your business.
Fascinating. So the workplace of the future is empowered with intelligence, enabling human beings. Any closing remarks?
Yeah, what we found along the way, especially when it comes to talent management, right, and people analytics, it's really easy to take the dystopian view of it, right? That everything we do is tracked, and algorithms hire us and fire us and make life and death decisions on our behalf. And that is not at all what we're going for, both because it's creepy, it's generally speaking a terrible idea. What we found along the way is by applying to by leaning on data to support our decision making when it comes to humans, to our teammates, right, to our talent, we could actually, there's lots of things that we're able to do that feel a lot like, that actually feel warm, that are a lot more human. Like, for example, we can mostly get the hell out of people's way when we know that we can detect issues early and intervene before they fester. Right, we find that we can retain talent a lot better, and we can solve the types of problems that generally wind up causing crises, certainly in all of the places I've ever worked. And generally speaking, right, all of this data is a way to, is a safety net that we can use to do less micromanaging, to do less command and control, to be able to trust the teams more, to make their own decisions closer to the problem space. So all in all, perhaps counterintuitively, it turns out that this kind of a data-driven framework allows us to be much more human in the way we interact with each other.
Yeah, as you understand, I'm a big proponent of the idea of AI as augmented intelligence rather than artificial intelligence. And I really believe that if you use it in the right way, it may come up with what I used to call a second scientific revolution, because the ability of humanity to think together will be accelerated to a large extent. So just think of the peer review process that we have in science, or the collaboration that we have in business. It takes so much time to read all the papers on genetics to just get hold of your profession. If you could capture on a graph the arguments and counter-arguments, the mind maps of what people are actually working on, the ability to search and to collaborate will accelerate to a tremendous level.
Well, thank you both. From genetics to mind maps, thank you for participating.
Thanks.
Thank you.